describes acts of extreme violence in graphic detail and may include discussions about demonology and the occult, topics that caused widespread panic during the 1980s. This content may not be suitable for children under the age of 50. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
Well, hi, this is James, and welcome to Grogtalk.
And now, from the Imperial Studio in the Free City of Longwood, welcome to Grogtalk.
Well, howdy. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Grogtalk. As you look, I'm not in my Grogtalk studios because, well, I'm in the process of moving, and we're going to talk about that soon. So I'm at an undisclosed location. Like the Emperor Constantine, I'm potentially moving the Imperial seat to another location. Once that is done, I will let you all know. But until then, this is how I'm going to be able to do the show for the foreseeable future. Thanks for joining me tonight, this afternoon, or tomorrow morning, depending on wherever you are in the Grog Empire. First, I want to thank everyone who subscribed. We are at over 1,000 subscribers for us, which is very exciting. And that's right. Well, that is also true. There have been some threats on my life after that rumors that there was a second emperor I disposed of. Again, any discussion of that is heresy and traitorous talk. But what is not traitorous talk is to talk about GrogCon at QuestCon, September 6th through 8th, down here at the Doubletree Orlando on Major Boulevard, September 6th through 8th. We're about 5 weeks away, and the theme of our convention is we're going back to pay homage to a classic series of adventures, with, of course, our own spin in the world of Grogtalk. This time, if you are able to come, you will be able to participate in this great new adventure series, Against Some Other Giants. That's right, against some other giants. And so some of the events that we have coming up is ASOG 1, which will be run by the decapitated Emperor, the Great House of the Fog Giant Hardy Har. ASOG 2, The Hunt for the Titan's Crook, and ASOG 3, Mine of the Mad Mushroom Monster Maker. Yes, they will all be available for you to come down and see. The tournament is inspired by the Red Isle of Terror, which of course is the domain of the Chamberlain, His Most High of Australia. And that's where the tournament's going to be held. Again, we're trying to keep all the adventures Grogtalk related or Grogtalk adjacent. There will, of course, be a Dwarven Forge adventure led by Tom and Lane. Exactly. These are not the giants you're looking for. These are against some other giants. And the Dwarven Forge game is Mystery of the Mystical Magic Mayhem something or other. So you're going in for a real treat, folks, when you get to, if you're able to come down. We're having also some great guests because we're part of QuestCon. Folks, internet celebrities like Felicia Day, who did Geek and Sundry for a while, and she did the Guild game, which was kind of a World of Warcraft parody, which was a lot of fun back in the day. Of course, Vic Dorso, the Scourge, will be joining us, and Carlos Lysing from Castle Entertainment will be here. So feel free to come on down and come on the 6th through 8th. Tickets are still available. And if you need any help getting here, please feel free to send me a note at info@grogcon.com. So our first topic for today is, well, it was inspired by me moving stuff, which, by the way, tonight's drink is a classic. It's Crown and ginger ale. It's a standard for me, and I will continue to drink it until the bottle runs out. And my wife got me some of that blackberry stuff. I guess the TikTokers are drinking that, the blackberry Crown. It's okay. I'll stick with the standard. So, movement in 1E. Yes. Because I was moving, I was thinking about movement in 1E. Busy buying and now selling a house. And as we know, moving is not fun. And it also is not fun. Movement in AD&D is not fun. Part of the reason it's not fun is that one of the key components to making movement critical to the game is encumbrance, and it must be managed, encumbrance. And unfortunately, people don't want to manage it. The players don't want to manage it. The DMs don't want to manage it. And so, unlike weapon speed or weapon adjustment, which are very fun and flavor-rich, but they tend to be situational. Weapon adjustment, if you're fighting against armored creatures or non-monsters, it's important, but someone else, it doesn't. So it's situational. But encumbrance and combat, they're key. They're used all the time, since combat is a key component of the game. Oh, excellent, Vic. I'm glad it's been purchased. I'll take care of that this weekend then. There's a number of things that happen if a player character is encumbered. That if you don't factor them in, really changes the dynamic of the game. First and foremost, an encumbered player character cannot charge, and charging is one of the most powerful options that a player character has to have during combat. And so not being able to charge here, and that's from page 66 on the DMG. They're not supposed to get reaction bonuses and are slowed if greatly encumbered. They're not supposed to be able to run. They're +2 to hit if they're encumbered. And so those are all important things that will happen. The DMG in page 225 talks about that the average person or normal person can move up to, will still be able to move somewhat if they're carrying 150 pounds, which of course is 1,500 gold piece weight. That doesn't factor in any strength bonus, because again, when they mean by normal, they're meaning normal strength. And also, if they're encumbered, they will drown. And so it's very clear that in first edition, that is a very important part of the game. It is part of, in fact, one of the key mini games of 1E is getting the crap that you acquired in the dungeon back, because much of the player's experience is based on the treasure that they bring back. But if you're, and a lot of the DMs will like to throw, instead of gold pieces, which is relatively easy, giving out carpets or large statues worth lots of money, and frescoes and these other giant things, or bottles of wine or crafts of beer, kegs of beer. So making it even harder to move it. The problem is, of course, players will not manage it, just like most players are not going to manage how many arrows they have or bullets they have. And so it's something that, I'd like to try to follow the rules as written, but it's a hassle, and it becomes an issue in the game, because they're constantly going, oh, I want to move this thing, I want to move this thing. So what can you do to fix it? Well, I think the first thing we need to do is assume players are encumbered unless they can prove they're not. That's what we start with. At least they should be 9 movement. Now, of course, if they're wearing armor, and the DMG talks about the type of normal armor they have and their corresponding speed, regardless of whether they're encumbered or not. And again, encumbrance is a function of the armor you're wearing, the things you're carrying, and if you have a strength adjustment for that. So what I want to start doing is saying, I assume every player is encumbered until they can prove they're not. Again, put this on the players to figure out if their characters are encumbered. And that the other thing that I'm guilty of, or at least when I'm running the game, is they'll find gold item that they're not sure who they want to permanently give to. So it just goes in the treasure list. This list of stuff that the scribe, usually one person's keeping track of all the treasure, and then at the end of the session or when they get back to town, they divvy up the money. Well, unless they have porters that they've brought or henchmen, or they have horses, someone needs to carry that. And I think it's important when every time they say, I'm picking up this tapestry, who is carrying that tapestry? And again, Gary Gygax talks about in the DMG, gives examples of encumbrance, and he specifically says, oh, they're attacked by a troll and they got to put this down. Yeah. And, if you remember the old school character sheets, that we'd even have which was on the left side, the middle, or the right side. And again, I don't know how much detail you need to go into, but at least they need to justify their encumbrance, because if not, then all these key components, particularly +2 to hit, I mean, that's a big deal. And of course, if they're encumbered, the monsters, if they're carrying a bunch of stuff, those things should affect them as well. So that's what I think about encumbrance and moving. It's terrible, but you need to do it, just like I need to move. What's your thoughts? Put your comments below and let me know what you think. So let me read over. Yes, drowning is bad. Drowning is very bad. I would say so. And Vic, you pick whatever adventure you want to do. That's the people's choice. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is eBay wins. I went online, and like everyone else, you peruse for things. And I hope this is what I think I won on eBay. This is going to be a reveal. I did not pre-check this out, so golly knows what I'm opening online. But we'll see. This is something from my past. I think I've mentioned it a couple of times, that back in the day when we were in 18 or 19. But when 18 or 19, well, we were big fans of D&D, and we played AD&D. After a while it would get serious. People would start getting mad because their characters were not doing well, et cetera, et cetera. And so we needed a break from it. One of the games I would play with them to release steam is Paranoia, which, by the way, I'll be running Paranoia Friday afternoon at GrogCon. What's in the box? So if you want to come, and I'm sure Vic is going to sign up for that because he's a big fan of Paranoia. But the other game that we would play a lot of to vent steam is Toon. That's right, Toon. The cartoon role-playing game. When we got this, it was a lot of fun. Again, I don't know how much campaigns you can do with this, but it's a very fun and silly game that is enjoyable. And actually, I put a poll out to see if people wanted me to run Paranoia Toon. They picked Paranoia. So what is Toon? Well, basically, you are simulating the great cartoons you used to watch on Saturday morning. And you make up a Toon character, and there's a series of scenes, and the players are enact what they do in the scenes, and of course, hilarity and things occur. So basically, kind of going to the intro, this was, again, written by Greg Costanyang, developed by Warren Spector, and it was Special thanks to Alan Varney, Gerald Swick, and Steve Jackson, not the British Steve Jackson, the American Steve Jackson, and of course for Jeff D, who thought he was kidding. So, what is Toon? It's a crazy world of cartoons. In this world, anything can happen. The laws of physics work only when you notice them. Characters spend most of their time plotting to cheat each other, blow each other up, eat each other, otherwise commit mayhem. But no one ever dies. So again, it's a very cathartic game that you can do all the things that you couldn't do in D&D because you were didn't want a permadeath on one of your characters. And again, it's pretty rolls light. This book is a whopping 64 pages with character sheet. So your character sheet looks like this. Looks like that. And it has name, species, natural enemies, beliefs, and goals. You have kind of hit points and plot points, possessions. You draw a picture and description. And you basically have 4 attributes: muscle, zip, which is kind of like agility, smarts, and chutzpah, which is kind of like your charisma kind of thing. And you would have these shticks, you know, kind of the things that you would see in those cartoons. So again, it's an opportunity to play a silly game and do fun things, and it's very it does provide a lot of opportunity for mayhem, which you know, some players don't like that. I mean, I see that in Paranoia. It takes about a half an hour, 45 minutes for people to get into the feel of this because they're so used to the serious tone of D&D, and they don't want to. It's hard for them to realize, hey, you know, that's what makes these games fun for a one shot or a couple things, because again, you're not invested of it. You're not super invested. You're having a good time. You're doing silly things. It's more of an improv. There are some rules. Again, the rules are secondary to the event and having fun doing that. So, if you have not played Toon, I got this for, I don't know, $15, $14, the first edition one. There's a second edition. I don't know if it's better or worse. There are also some modules and adventures. I'm sure there's plenty more to this, but it's definitely one of the old school, you know, or what I would call mid-generation in the golden era. You know, it came out in the mid-'80s, early to mid-'80s. Let me see when this was. What was the time for this? 1984. So again, Paranoia, Toon, you know, the first generation being the Travelers of the World and the RuneScapes and the Tunnels and Trolls and D&D and all that ilk. This was kind of the early to mid-'80s. So, again, I highly recommend it if you are interested in that. All right, so my next topic is, again, another revelation as I'm moving, and actually it also came to me during the last few adventures. And this opinion has been growing over the last few sessions as I've DM'd this campaign, this Rules Cyclopedia or BECME campaign. Originally, I had intended for the players to map, and because you can do shifting walls a lot easier, and there's some ambiguity, but eventually that took longer. They were making mistakes, and so now I'm mapping, and we tend to use miniatures, and we have some set stuff that again Lane, our dear friend, has, and when he has stuff, it's super cool. So we try to use it as much as possible. But over time, this has led to more and more of grid-based combat. The map having to be exact because we fall into grid-based combat. We have big rolling pieces of graph paper, so we can scale it to 1 each equals 5 feet, so the miniatures fit properly. And so I've come to the realization that I think minis suck. I think minis suck. I think terrain sucks. I think they're all not for me. They lead to people worried about their facing, people worried about their positioning, distance. Again, it leads to this large map and settings and a grid, and the game becomes confined in it. And now as the DM, I can't just say, hey, the room is 40 by 60, circular room. Now they want it mapped exactly, so they can place their miniatures where it needs to be. And also it comes to, and as far as then they have to move their players' pieces around, and also it tends to have the players feel like they have all the information. Unless you're using a virtual tabletop where you have some fog of war, if you're using it live in person, you've got that. Everything becomes very certain, and if it's not on the map, it doesn't really exist. And I think the only thing that should be certain for them is what's on their character sheets. Secret doors, rooms, shifting walls are harder to have. There's also, we've also played where, again, we created this whole water temple, and it took a long time for Lane to do it. And it was amazing. It looked wonderful. But it was a little bit of a metagaming. They knew they were in the corner of the map, and they knew, well, we're done here because we're going to move this way. Whereas if they don't have that, type of visual cues, is that. So I think all this also causes, it restricts a lot of rulings, and you get a lot of rules. And it causes what I call literalitis, that the only thing that the players want to do is think and react to what's on the table. If they open the door and there's 10 orcs in there. Well, of course, let's say I only have 9 minis of orcs. I don't want to put 9 minis in a cube or a dice or a square or something else. So I have 9, and then once one dies, I put it back. Like, hey, I thought there was only 9. I said I told you there were 10 of them. If you put props in there, they're like, oh, I'm going to search the room and I'll check this red book. Well, the red book is on the red book doesn't exist in the room. The red book exists on the prop. That's the bookshelf. It doesn't really exist. Or how many candles are there? They want to, in the combat, they want to throw the chair. Well, I didn't have an iron throne, so I used a chair. And then the problem is, of course, they say, well, I want to throw the chair. I said, no, it's not a chair, it's an iron throw. But they say, of course, well, it looks like a chair. They get rulers out to measure distance. And again, all this is in 1E. It talks, a lot of it's based on the wargaming. I mean, that is the pedigree of what we're dealing with. And it all makes sense. And I've done it for years. We've used chess for a long time, even if it wasn't minis, and we used little dice, and you were the 4-sided and you were the 6-sided. I get it, but what are we gaining for all this effort? Part of it to me is now the players start moving in the squares. Maybe they have a better understanding of what's going on. But it also takes away some of the creativity. For instance, instead of saying across the stream, a number of figures move towards the water while behind them a handful of them begin to mutter and motion wildly. Well, that's a different scenario than if you have to play out 8 skeletons and 3 clerics like we did last time. I think part of it too is it reminds me of collectible card games. My sons were into Magic the Gathering, and so was I. And again, that's a great game. But a lot of the game is not playing the game. It's collecting and thinking about the cards that either you have or don't have. And one of the faults I have is this idea of completeness. If I'm playing in this set of Magic cards, I want to have all the Magic cards. And then I think that also permeates D&D, and certainly, if Lane, who I was talking about, who's online, has the pieces, looks great, but when it doesn't, we all kind of feel like, ugh. And I know he's bought pieces to make the adventure better, which of course I kind of feel bad with. So, I also think that's where the game is going. Clearly, if you are paying attention to the minions or the overlords of D&D, they want the game to be more Magic the Gathering. And so people spend money on virtual tabletops and virtual skins and virtual cloaks and all these other things, which, again, really D&D should be a piece of paper, dice, and maybe a couple of rule books. And again, if you like doing that, that's great. I just think, for me, it slows down the game. Having maps that are scale, we have this cadence. I describe what's happening, then I have to draw the map, or I have to reveal it. Then the players have to move the minis, they have to reach others to get their position. And it just feels like it takes a lot longer than, if there's a 50-foot corridor, say it's 50-foot corridor and there's a couple of doors, they say they move down as opposed to moving the pieces. So I think this is leading to the video gamation, is that a word? Of D&D, which unfortunately old school D&D does poorly. I think it also potentially leads to more sets, and you want to use them because, well, if you set time to prepare it, you always kind of feel bad since you've already laid out the pieces. I was playing Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't played it in a while, but it does tactical combat way better than regular D&D because the computer does all these things for you. And I think one of the other things is it limits the DM. I think the biggest disadvantage is you lose that fog of war, specifically the ambiguity of the players not knowing how many monsters are there. It's easy to count. D&D, we slow down to bullet time in combat. Instead of saying there's a horde of kobolds, they know there's 17 of them or 14 of them. These rounds are 10 seconds, well, at least, or in AD&D, it's 1 minute. That ambiguity allows the DM to make changes. Can you do it? Of course you can. But for me, some of that makes it a little bit harder. There are times when the players are mopping up the remaining monsters who may be able to hit the party maybe once or twice, but the combat's over. We all know it's over. I think sometimes if the DM says you kill them, sure, the players are happy, but there is that cognitive dissonance of seeing figs that were not dead, and that breaks the impact of verisimilitude, that word of saying, you're trying to immerse people. If they don't see them, the DM says that the rest of them surrender or die. This is similar to when the DM says the dialogue's complete. The combat's over. Why are we going to waste any more time? I think, the purpose there is to say that there's no more useful information that can happen. So what do you lose by not using mini intimidate? Well, I think if you have tactical players who like minis, they're not going to be happy with it. And, I know the group I have like playing with it. And that's fine. We use it, and we're moving forward with it. I think, though, and that's ultimately compromises the game, because, again, I'm one player of 7 or 8, or how many there are in the thing. And I don't get my whole way, and neither do the player characters. So, if everyone likes to have minis and buy their minis and put them down, okay. But there's consequences to that. It's also easier to keep track of who's fighting who is easier done with minis. The DM would then have to keep a better handle of, okay, Joe's got 3 kobolds on him, and Sue's got 2 kobolds on her, and a ghoul, and how close is Sue and Joe? Yeah, minis make that a lot easier, but it avoids some of the tactical things. You can say, hey, Joe wants to help them. Yeah, you're right next to each other, or not. Again, that's if you've got a group that is interested in that, you definitely want to do it. And keeping track of who's fighting who is certainly within it. Another impact is area of effect spells. That can be both good and bad. If as the DM, the party's not doing so well, you can reasonably say, oh, that fireball hit 12 of the orcs. Whereas if it's on a grid, they know they can all see it has 6, and you don't have a situation where you can change that. And so again, it gives the DM some flexibility to adjust should they want to. Because again, most adventures are not play tested. You are running it for the first time with your group. Encounters that you thought would be relatively easy is a slog, and the players, they're having a challenge with it. because either you assume certain things or certain spells did not go their way. Conversely, other things are supposed to be really hard, and instead it comes off as a cakewalk, which again, I'm not as concerned about that, unless the players get bored and they don't like the fact that every encounter is easy. Most players don't mind that, but you want to give them challenges. You want to have the series of hard encounters, medium encounters, easy encounters, and then you throw in the randomness so that they never quite know what's happening. And neither do you, and that's what makes it fun. But again, that's my thoughts on it. And I'm sure I've played Theater of the Mind, and if I started playing Theater of the Mind again, there'll be times I'll be like, gee, I wish I had minis. So, I go ebb and flow of this stuff. But I think the biggest thing is where that ambiguity and not having it defined on a physical map is an advantage to D&D, especially as I'm more interested in less rules because I'm just getting old. Oh no, paranoia is fun? Full? Wow, that was quick. Again, what are your thoughts? What did I get right or what did I miss? Please put your comments below and, tell me what you think in your game. How much do you use minis? Terrain? What's the positive experiences of that? Again, this is kind of my thoughts. So, next on the show is our kick-ass magic item, which if you guys don't have this, you really need to have it. This is Ron's old school collection, which includes the reader and the compendium. And it's available on Amazon, and the link is in the description below. It is chock full. Can I say chock full? Chock full of 377 pages of goodness of D&D stuff. And so today's exciting magic item, which I like, is this thing called the Undead Whistle. It's on page 184 of the Ron's Old School collection, available on Amazon, if I didn't mention that. And so what this is a rare item, much like a small stone, which is hollowed out. It's crude form. It's used by clerics of good alignment or paladins at third level above. And basically, it's like the dog whistle, but for undead, which I thought was super cool. It paralyzes lesser undead for 1 to 3 rounds, ghouls and gas. They actually can't do as their little paralyzed thing for a while, which is kind of cool. And other undead, it basically neuters them, and they're not as... it's like the Bumble without any teeth, basically. And it also helps the cleric gain an advantage on turning. But what really makes this cool is the way Ron accepts the spirit of old school magic items. Because when you have the good magic item, you gotta have the bad magic item. And then there is the undead whistle. So right below it is the undead whistle cursed. Absolutely identical in appearance to the standard undead whistle. This device may be winded by any character. Well, that should be the first clue. If anyone can wind it, that means it's probably bad. But again, you wouldn't know that. This one will alert undead creatures up to 240 feet away in any direction of their exact location, and then the DM decides what they're going to do, and that they know where they are for that whole turn, and that they get +2 their attack rolls, and anyone within 20 feet of the cursed whistle for the first 3 melee rounds once combat has begun. What's interesting, it says all undead creatures will receive +2 on their to hit rolls against anyone within 2 feet of the cursed whistle for the first 3 melee rounds. So one of the things that our group has been using is the Chime of Hunger. We were using that for a while. And that's a super fun thing. Even though it's cursed and supposed to make you think, what they were doing was the person who had it would run in the middle of people, and he had a very high save against the spells or whatever. I think he was a halfling or a dwarf. He would ring the chime of opening, surrounded by all these enemies. And of course, the enemies, a lot of them would fail their saves, and they would start attacking each other. I could definitely see this being used. The first time the party gets it, obviously they're not happy because they've attracted all these creatures. But then that cursed item for the party becomes a tactical advantage. You could give it to someone who's invisible. And again, undead, typically invisibility doesn't mean much to them, but you could sneak them into the enemy camp, blow the whistle, all the undead come and attack them. So again, check out Ron's old school collection of, it has spells, it has monsters, and it has magic items. And I'm going to say that, here's a spoiler, if you are playing the tournament, it's very likely some of the things that you will encounter will be coming out of this book or Flipping and Turning, because again, these adventures are based on the world of Grogtalk. So, well, that wraps up our show for tonight. Tell me what you think in the comments below. The next time I'm going to see you all is at GrogCon live. We're going to do a live show. We're going to have some great guests. Of course, Vic will be there, Carlos. The decapitated emperor will be there. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing everyone there. And until next time, this is James for GrogCon and Grogtalk. Take care.